teachers, I wanted to jump on again and give you a few more quick and easy games that you can use as you transition to online lessons. So these are for rhythm, not so much counting, but for learning the note names, kind of the vocabulary of things, and also understanding the relationship between long and short notes. I guess what notes are longer than others or shorter than others. And because of that, these games actually can work with very beginning students, early elementary, but they all can sort of, what's the word? Continue. My vocabulary is escaping me at the moment. But these games can continually progress and get a little bit more difficult to appeal to some mid-elementary and late elementary students as well. I'm going to use just one thing to demonstrate these games. These are the rhythm playing cards from Music Mind Games. So I've had some inquiries about where I'm getting some of these materials that I'm using. I just happen to have these because I was using these before I transitioned to online teaching. But they do pop visually, so I'll go ahead and link those in the comments. But also, I'm trying to present games that you don't have to run out and get these, that you can use things that you already have, and that you can also make materials. You know, if you have index cards and markers. So I'll try to show some of those things along the way. Also, I'm going to show these on my magnetic dry erase board, but I was also thinking some of you with multiple camera angles could probably display these if you have a camera set up maybe over a table, the way you could display some of these things that way. So that's another option, so you don't have to run out and get a magnetic dry erase board. So there you go. This very first game is another Fini game. If you watched my video with the music alphabet, I had a Fini game. So this is just very basic. This would be kind of a very beginning sort of thing. I'll take you over to my dry erase board. So the rhythm playing cards, they have a bunch of blue cards, so you've got all these different note values. So they include just your basic note values. So this, again, you would just stack them up, whole note, and you can have students, you can say them half note and have them say it back. So you've got that verbal interaction. So they kind of feel like you're there interacting with them. Quarter note, eighth note, and 16th note. Now I realize beginning students aren't probably seeing these in their music, but that's okay. They're still learning the language so that when you do get to it, it's not totally brand new. They sort of have a name for the things that they're seeing, and then understanding how to do them and understanding the math of it all makes more sense. So here they're just realizing that this note is longer than this note, or this note is longer than this note, that kind of stuff. So that would be the most basic level. Now, the deck also includes yellow cards that have all the rests. So separately, you could do the same sort of Fini game. And just a quick review if you didn't see the video. So the point of Fini is that you're building from longest to shortest, saying them as you go, whole note, half note, quarter note, whole rest, half rest, quarter rest, sorry about that, eighth rest, 16th rest. You're saying them verbally as you go. At the end, when you're done, you say Fini. And again, that idea of saying Fini is just to teach students not to say fine, and also that Fini means ending. So, and they're excited, you know, if they're trying to race and kind of get through that, to say Fini. Now, your students, more than likely, are not going to have these at home. And so what you can do is just have students take, hopefully they have index card, construction paper, I mean, whatever you have, right? Cardstock. And they can make these cards. Now, I know they don't look as pretty, but we're being resourceful right now, using what we have so that they can do this. They could do this at home on their own time. If you don't have these cards and you want to do that game, it's the same thing. You can make these out of things that you have. Or you may even have some other printed materials that will kind of work in the same way. So playing the Fini game just with notes, just with rests, and once those are both comfortable separate, then you can kind of combine these and you can alternate whole note, whole rest, half note, half rest. So then they're connecting that kind of for every note value there is also a rest value. And so that's another fun thing to do with these cards. And again, you could make your own. Very quickly, I wanted to also show people have asked about the magnetic stripping. So these, I actually just have magnetic tape. It's very, very flat. Hold on one second. And so the cards don't stand out on the board, which I'm realizing sometimes they're hard to grab if you don't have longer fingernails, which as piano teachers we probably don't, right? But here's just the regular magnetic tape. I got this at Walmart. So if you go to Walmart online, there's a lot of stuff there you can buy just for pickup if your area is still doing pickup. And there's plenty of things that you can buy right now, all different kinds of magnets. So you'll see this tape, you'll see rolls of magnetic stripping that's a little bit thicker, that has the self-adhesive backing on it, and then you'll even see round discs, magnet discs that you can use. So now the last thing I wanted to tell you about this is the deck also contains dotted notes. So there's a dotted half note, a dotted quarter note, and a dotted eighth note. And this is where you can sort of up the level. So sometimes the sequencing of Music Mind Games is to add all the dotted notes in at once, because then what students will understand, I'll move these out of the way again, what students will start to understand is that not necessarily that this is 3 beats, but that this is longer than that. Or I'm sorry, that this is longer than that. I apologize. This is longer than that, and then if you put this in, that this would be longer than that. So you're just learning the relationship of that. Hold on one second. Sorry. You know, everyone is home now, right? And trying to function. So, our dog, Daphne, didn't want to be in my studio anymore while I was doing this video. Apologies about that. So, and then you can build the same tower using those dotted notes in between, or you could even at this point, sometimes students at this level, they're, you know, vertical is fine too. So that makes sense. And again, then you're learning all the notes and you're learning all the relationships, and dotted notes become a little bit less of a scary thing. They're seeing them right away. So that's another way. And again, you can also add in the rests as you go, and go back and forth and alternate a note with a rest. A question that will often come up are why there are no dotted rests. And we just talk about those being extra special, so there are no cards for those. And then when a dotted rest shows up in music at some point, it does become a really extra special and kind of exciting thing instead of a frightening thing, right? So that's one way to do that. And again, all of these can be done just by making cards if that's what you need to do. Now, this next game, it actually does work better to have the deck of cards, but if you like crafting, you could easily make this with index cards. But this is one thing where your students will need to have to make their own set at home to go with a set that you have in studio. So, some of you may know about the card game War. You can play the card game War with these rhythm playing cards or your own homemade cards. So whichever you have, so if you have, I'm going to go ahead and use this deck because it's easier. Whatever deck you have, just go ahead and split it in half, and you're going to take half the deck, and the other student will have their set. Now if you have a whole deck of cards, this game can go, of course, much longer. But if you're making your own cards, it will just be a shorter game, but that's totally okay. You know, you don't have to spend 15 minutes of your lesson time playing this card game. It can just be really quick. So what would happen is, so I think most of you know the card game War. So the longest note value is going to win in this game. So I will keep my cards hidden. The students will keep their cards hidden. And then we will go 1, 2, 3, and we'll and sound effects, of course, sound effects, and we'll put them up on the screen, and then whoever gets the longest note value, which probably would not be me, they would go ahead and get to, normally they would take my card and their card, but because we're doing this online and they can't do that, they just get to put their card down, right? So the point of this game is not really who wins the game, it's that they're learning about the length of note values, right? So it actually takes that competitive edge off of it, which is okay in my opinion, but anyway. And then you would do, and so what I would do, sorry, I forgot to mention, what I would do with this short note value card is just put it aside. I wouldn't use it anymore. So I've still lost the card, but the other student doesn't actually have the card, if that makes sense. So, or I should say the student. There's not another student, I'm the teacher, right? So then you would do the same thing. You go to the next card, ready, set, pshoo. And then of course, yay, the teacher won. So I would keep that card for myself, and then the student would take their shorter card and just kind of put it in the discard pile, if that makes sense. So you would just keep going. Now, that can take a long time with that many cards, so you could limit the number of cards. If you're doing index cards, it would be the same thing. You would just probably have fewer cards. 1, 2, 3, put up your card, and then whoever has the longest note would keep their card. So maybe I got the longest note this time. Maybe my student had a 16th note. They would discard their 16th note, and I would keep my quarter note. So it's not a perfect way to do a card game, but it's the best way to do that kind of card game online. So a couple of other things with the war game. So generally when you play war, you have a full deck. So you have all the rests, all the dotted notes, and all the non-dotted note values. But I have often modified it just to do your typical note values that you're seeing in music. That first tower, so whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note. And sometimes, because students are seeing it in their music, I will throw in that dotted half note. So you could play the card game just using those. Sometimes maybe you just want to do rests separately if students are really struggling with rests. And then you could combine rests and regular note values and then work up to the dotted note values, okay? Now, if you want to go all in, sometimes students will really learn when they're just kind of thrown into a situation. The rhythm playing cards all have, oh, I don't think I have any. They all have guide cards. I think I've set them, I've set the guide cards away somewhere, but they have little cards that show you things. So, for example, you could even draw on your dry erase board, if you have this, or somewhere, or have a student draw this. You could just draw. If you're doing all of them, you could draw the whole range of, oh, you can't see that. Draw the whole range of them. And then they could look up here. This is very sloppy, I apologize. Maybe I should, let's just forget that. That did not work very well, did it? I'm going to try again. So you could, maybe we could do this. You could draw the order of the cards like this, so that they have a guide to look at. And for some students, even if the information is brand new to them, the fact that they can look at a guide and kind of think through it and figure it out on their own is actually really, really empowering. So that's another thing you can do. Last of all, I wanted to mention, and now I'm going to forget. Oh, I know what I was going to mention. Making the homemade cards. If you're in a position where the student kind of has to make their own cards if they're going to do this, because they're not going to have these at home, and I know you're not going to ask your students to all buy new materials for this process. Actually making the cards could be part of a theory lesson within a lesson. So drawing all those note values, especially if they're new, it can be a review for some students, it can be a brand new experience. So that's a great way to do music theory, where you're not actually doing a worksheet where you're sending it back and forth and you have to correct it, but they're actually making the game that they're going to use. That makes it more exciting, I think, and more engaging for the student to work on, because they're making something tactile that they're actually going to use, not just writing on a worksheet, which for some students we all know is not very appealing. So I hope that's helpful. So Fini with regular sort of non-dotted note values, Fini with rests, and then Fini with non-dotted note values and rests together, and then going through that same process and adding those dotted notes in. And then the war card game, where the longest note value wins. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that made sense, as I know I was kind of talking quickly, and I'm doing this very impromptu-like, without practice and without a script. So please let me know if you have questions. I would be happy to help, and I will link the rhythm playing cards in the comments, and I'll try to also maybe toss in a link for some magnetic stripping because I've had lots of questions about that. So, alrighty, hang in there, teachers. Take care. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.